Dr. Dennis Wilson, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for making time for me today, especially the day that's in it. So, how are you today?
I'm terrific. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shemaine, for having me on. I'm delighted to speak with you about anything you want to talk about and share it with your listeners.
Well, I'm sure if we spoke about anything I wanted to talk about, we'd be wasting people's time. So, we'll probably just stick to your work and hopefully leave people with some quality information.
Okay.
So, before we go on, I'm going to give you a little intro because I'm aware that it's been a while since you've done a podcast, and maybe some people aren't aware of who you are. If they are not, I don't know what's wrong with them, but I'll help them out now. So, you developed the concept of Wilson's temperature syndrome in 1988. And we're going to get into how you even came across that because it happened very early in your career. And since then, you have been training and teaching practitioners all over the world and doing lectures on what Wilson's temperature syndrome is and how it relates to thyroid function and the overall symptom picture. You are since retired, but you are blessing me today with your presence, and we're going to fill people in on everything that you teach, did, and do. But first, when you got accepted into medical school, it wasn't long after that you started or came up with the idea of Wilson's temperature syndrome. How did that even come about?
Yeah, that's a good question because it was really at the very start of my career. And what happened is a patient came to my office and she had a book with her, and it was a book by Rhoda Barnes, and it was um, Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspected Illness was the name of the book. And he focused on something that was not focused on when I went to medical school, and it's not focused on a lot, the only place it's focused on any really is in naturopathic schools. It's not focused on in medical schools, but allopathic medical schools. Um, but the whole premise of his book was he emphasized the importance of body temperature as a good indicator of thyroid physiology or thyroid function as compared to the thyroid blood tests. That
Mm-hmm.
was that was the main thrust of it. And he focused on using a T4 containing medicines such as Synthroid or Armor, desiccated thyroid, and he postulated that if you had a low body temperature, then you had hypothyroidism, and that you could take this thyroid medicine for life to help you maintain a normal temperature. And I was fascinated by that, and I treated a couple of patients with his approach, and some of those patients got 100% better. They got completely normal. And that was something that wasn't supposed to happen based on what I had read about or what I was taught in medical school.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't supposed to happen. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you had a normal TSH, you should have been disqualified. Theoretically, you had not, you could, there was no chance you could respond to thyroid medicine.
And you
But
shouldn't
but
have symptoms either.
that's right. No symptoms, no response. But yet, but yet, when I gave the desiccated thyroid or the thyroid hormone in these patients, and when their temperatures got to normal, they got completely better. Their thyroid-like symptoms disappeared. And so I thought to myself, oh my gosh, because I remember when I was in medical school, they taught those lessons about thyroid and thyroid blood tests. They taught them so dogmatically, probably more dogmatically than anything else in medicine. Like in medicine, everybody's different and this and that. And you have to treat a patient accordingly. But for some reason, the culture of thyroid has gotten to the point that if the TSH is normal, that's it. So that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I thought, oh my gosh, they were so dogmatic about that. And I thought, oh my gosh, if they if that wasn't true, then perhaps nothing they taught me in medical school was true. I mean, because they taught that like it was the truth.
This is
Like,
gospel, and you don't veer from this.
right.
Mhm.
And I thought, I couldn't believe it. It's just like, this is so not true. Like, these people didn't get, it's not like, like when you have an itch, like, and you itch it and it goes away. I
Mhm.
mean, it's not, it's not like if you itch around the itch, it might feel a little bit better, but when you itch right on the itch and it goes away completely, then you got it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. And so it's just like, their symptoms weren't a little better and they weren't sort of the symptoms that disappeared. It was the exact symptoms and they disappeared completely. It was just like, anyway. So I found that some of those patients' symptoms didn't respond as well as I would have hoped. And
Mhm.
so I started thinking about that a lot. It's just like, well, there's got to be something more here. And anyway, long story short, I found that sometimes those people, they responded better to T3 than T4, better to T3 than Armor or desiccated or Synthroid.
Mhm.
And sometimes you couldn't get their temperature up with a T4 containing medicine, but you could get their temperature up with T3. And the other thing that was really surprising that I found out accidentally is that once you get their temperatures up with T3, a lot of times when they wean off the T3, their temperatures remain improved and their symptoms remain resolved even after they're off the thyroid medicine. So it's actually resetting their body temperatures, like resetting their thermostat. And it's not like, sometimes it's just, I mean, the shortest period of time it took to do that was like a week. Sometimes it would take 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes, typically, patients would be on the medicine for 2 to 3 months.
Mhm.
But you'd have people come in with their body temperatures like 97.8.
Mhm.
You would increase their body temperatures with T3 therapy. Their symptoms would resolve. And then within a couple of 3 months, you'd wean them off the medicine and their temperatures would hold and their symptoms would remain improved.
Were you using, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure it was you that I heard may have been using very high doses of T3 as a reset and then titrating down before getting them off.
Yes, that would probably be me. I've been referred to that way before. Sometimes it wasn't so much about giving the T3 high doses of T3. It was about giving enough T3 to normalize the temperature.
Mm.
And so for some people, that wouldn't be a high dose. It would be 7.5 micrograms twice a day. For other people, it might be 15 or 22.5 twice a day, or it might be 30 or 37.5. But yeah, pretty soon it's 90 micrograms twice a day, and that is a high dose.
Hmm.
And so I would have people on 90 micrograms twice a day of sustained release T3. And that is a high dose. I mean, people have used higher doses than that, but yeah, that's a high dose. And sometimes it would take that to get their temperatures up and that's why I increase the dose gradually because you don't jump up to 90 micrograms twice a day. You start with 7.5 twice a day. And if they tolerate that okay, then the next day
Hmm.
you can put them to 15
Hmm.
twice a day. And the next day after that, if their temperature's still low, it's 22.5. You don't have to wait a long time before you increase the dose because the T3 is an active hormone. It doesn't have to be converted from T4 to T3. So there's nothing to wait for. As soon as you put that in your mouth and it goes into your stomach, it's on the job. It's on
Hmm.
the job within half an hour. So to really to be clear, if you had an infusion pump, you could increase the dose every hour until their temperature was normal.
Hmm.
You don't have to wait. But anyway, we only waited a day just because, it was an oral medication and we were trying to adjust the dose carefully with um, an oral medicine. But yeah, with an IV or something like that, yeah, you could increase it every hour if you wanted to.
So I have the problem is one. most allopathic doctors would have a heart attack if you told them about that dose. They'd be like, "Oh no, no, you can't do that. You're going to give someone hyperthyroidism, then they'll have a stroke and die." And then I do have clients who have titrated it up themselves. The one client was lucky enough that she was able to get her hands on a lot of T3 and it was prescription through her doctor, but I think maybe the doctor was going on medical leave, so she gave her extra. So she had a lot of T3. She was taking 30 micrograms a day, nothing was happening. So she increased and increased till she felt wonderful. The problem is then when she came to the end of having that much availability of T3, the doctor would not renew it. Even though she's screaming from the treetops, I feel wonderful on this dose. But now, because the doctor won't renew it, she's had to bring it back down and try fill in the gaps other ways. And this is a challenge that a lot of people have, which is unfortunate.
Totally, totally unfortunate. Yeah. Mm. In our medical industry, if you make the same mistake everybody else makes, it's fine. It's fine to make the same mistake everybody else makes. And so that's kind of what we have going on. As long as everybody thinks that you can measure metabolic rate with a blood test,
Mhm.
and that's wrong. You cannot measure metabolic rate with a blood test. Full stop, period, end of story. You can't, it does not measure metabolic rate. A
Mhm.
blood test, the only way you can measure blood tests, I mean, metabolic rate, you can measure oxygen consumption. You can measure, then that's how they do it in research. When they're measuring metabolic rate, they put a mask on people. They collect
Yeah.
their CO2, they measure their oxygen consumption. That's how you do it. That's how it's always done. That's how you measure metabolic rate. And then the other way to measure metabolic rate is calories produced or calories expended or generated, or in other words, body temperature.
Mhm.
That's the other way.
Mhm.
And it's a perfect way. I like to say it's not body temperature isn't a good way to measure metabolic rate. It's an exact measure. If your metabolic rate goes up, your body temperature goes up. If
Mhm.
your metabolic rate goes down, your body temperature goes down.
Mhm.
So it's an exact measurement of your metabolic rate. Now, your temperature, your fever might go up due to a virus, but still, yeah, the virus is causing your metabolic rate to go up, and hence your temperature is going up.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, the idea, anyway, yeah, I'm with you. I'm sorry that people can't get they can't get the cooperation from the medical world the way they'd like to, the way I'd like to see them get it.
It's tough, and it's tough for practitioners like me and doctors like you that know there's a better way when a client or a person's crying on the other end of the phone because there's no alternative for them. And lucky with a bit of like rooting around, you can find ways to help people, but it's just like it's sinful that we keep stuff like therapies from people when at the end of the day, most of us know better. So, um, so just to kind of summarize what Wilson's temperature syndrome is, it is a way of using body temperature to not only understand what's happening with the thyroid, but the body overall, and you do look at the symptom picture as well.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. The the T3 protocol is really a temperature tool. I mean, the real crux of the matter of Wilson's temperature syndrome is that there's a lot of people with low temperatures. And when they have low temperatures, they have symptoms, and those symptoms are classic. And they happen to be the exact same symptoms as hypothyroidism.
Mhm.
And hypothyroidism causes the symptoms the symptoms of hypothyroidism are basically the symptoms of low body temperature.
Mhm.
And having a deficient thyroid gland that doesn't produce enough T4 is just one way that you can get a slow metabolism and a low body temperature. That's one way.
Mhm.
You don't have enough T4 production, which causes you to have, lower T3 production and lower metabolism and lower body temperature. But there's another way that's a lot more common, and that's when you have a normal TSH, but you're still not getting enough of a body temperature. And
Mhm.
so one is kind of irreversible, where you have to take thyroid medicine for life, and one is reversible, that you have to take thyroid medicine for a couple, 3 months.
Mhm.
That's one approach. There's another approach that is definitely worth considering, and that is theoretically it's possible to change the body temperature over time with a certain kind of exercise. And that's the faster size that we can
Mhm.
talk about at some
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, so there's different things that can cause a low temperature, and there's different things that can rectify a low temperature. But the T3 therapy is kind of like, to be honest, it's just like, well, is Wilson's temperature syndrome a thyroid problem? I don't know. I don't know if it's a, I don't know if it's a thyroid. I don't think it's a thyroid gland problem, but is it a thyroid system problem?
Mhm.
I don't know because, but I do know this. If you give somebody enough T3 to normalize their temperature and then you wean them off, a lot of times they recover and they stay normal. That's all I know. Like, so the T3 is something that works in every cell of the body. It's actually there are receptors in the nuclear in the inside the nucleus of the cell. There's also receptors in the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell.
Mhm.
So we know that it's really important, but how all that's exactly regulated, isn't completely clear. But anyway, you don't really need to know all the ins and outs because um, it's something that can be reversed. So
So it's primarily a conversion issue, though. So this is where
that,
people look, quote, normal on a blood panel, yet they have all of the symptoms.
yeah, in the beginning, I theorized and supposed that it is a conversion problem, and it makes sense. Like it's a paradigm, it's a theory. So yeah, maybe the T4 isn't getting converted to T3, and you have too much reverse T3, and that's blocking the T3, and that's all plausible and it's possible. I I don't think I can prove that. I don't think anybody can prove that, but you know, like but when that but when the supply issue, for some reason there's not getting enough T3, and even that I'm not even sure about that because the body regulates itself, and why is the body temperature low? Is the body temperature low a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I think in some ways it is a good thing because it does sometimes it's good for your metabolism to slow down, like if you don't have access to food, for example.
Hmm.
And if you're starving, or if you've got a broken leg and you're in a cave and you can't get to medical care or something like that. So theoretically, the body slowing itself down, and I do think it slows itself down by slowing down the conversion to T3, and it does slow itself down. But we also know that sometimes the body gets out of balance, and sometimes it gets into position, and it's hard to get itself back. And like for example, when you don't exercise, you get into a certain state, and then when you start to exercise, you come out of that state. And so was it abnormal for you to get into the state of poor exercise health, and was it abnormal for you to get out of it? Not necessarily, but anyway, I'm sorry to get so deep into semantics, but it's like, but yeah, I just want to focus on the idea that, because a lot of people can shoot down your ideas, but one thing that nobody, I would challenge anybody to argue with this. Show me, I mean, I guarantee you that if you give somebody enough T3 to normalize their temperature,
Hmm.
almost all, like a lot of those people are going to be feeling terrific,
Hmm.
way better, like a huge response. And a lot of times when you wean them off, their temperature is going to stay normal after you've weaned them off. Like that's a fantastic life-saving result. I mean, that's a life-changing result. I've had
Hmm.
people stay completely normal for 5 years off the treatment, and then they'll go through some major stress and then they'll relapse and they'll know exactly what it is because they've been there before. They get on the T3 again, they recover, they go another 5 years without a problem until they go through another major stress.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put them on the T3 again and they recover again. That's 10 years of their lives that have been, you know,
Changed, yeah.
yeah.
So
So,
it is important and interesting that you mentioned that because when the metabolic rate does slow down, it sounds from not just your proposal, many people have put this forward that when the metabolic rate slows down, it could be from many things, but it could also be a protective mechanism, a survival mechanism. And then the question is, well, why? Why is your body trying to protect you or keep you alive? What are you experiencing right now? And you mentioned it twice on each of those 5 year turnovers. It's like something stressful or traumatic. Something has happened in your life that has caused your body to go into, for lack of better terminology, survival mode again. And then why? And the more you do it, hopefully, the more you recognize. But it's really important to highlight that because most people, I would argue, at least the people I speak to, because although I speak to healthy people, they don't usually ask me for help because they're already healthy. So the
mhm.
people I speak to that need help, there's usually a mountain of stress in their life. They've had something traumatic or some event where they've had chronic stress, and that's where everything went wrong. And obviously, not just the slowing down of the metabolism, you've got bad habits creep in there as well as we use food for comfort and self-medication and all of that. But it really does highlight that as much as I still to this day think stress, as much as we talk about it, people still think, oh, it's very woo-woo. It's just a feeling, it's just an emotion. It really does have solid foundation in our biochemistry and how then we appear in the world and how we feel and everything. And I kind of roll my eyes when I speak to my clients. I'm like, I know I sound like a broken record, but it really is stress at the end of the day for most people is their biggest challenge.
I completely agree. So, in your experience, you've noticed that people they tend to start going downhill after, you can often trace it to an episode of severe stress. Has that been your
Hmm.
experience?
Yeah, and
Okay.
usually in my consultations, like when I'm working with clients long term and they're doing amazing, and then there's some hiccup, something happens in life, and then as we say, it throws them off track. And then
Right.
it's very hard for them to get back on track. And when they do, it's like they're never the same again. It's
Right.
more of a challenge. And then when I'm doing a consultation with someone that I've never met before, in my best words possible, because remember, I'm from Dublin, so sometimes I have to choose my words. I will ask, well, did anything traumatic happen in your life? And it doesn't have to be what a lot of people refer to nowadays, and not to downplay sexual abuse or anything, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be a death in the family, a car crash, anything. And sometimes people will say, no, no, everything's fine. And I'll say, what about your mom when she was pregnant? Do you know, did she have an easy pregnancy? Was there violence in the marriage? And sometimes people will say yes. And then you kind of go, oh, this makes sense now. But this is usually the case for most people I speak to. Stress is the biggest obstacle for most people.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that makes that conversation easier is when you connect it with body temperature. So it's like if you notice, like I totally agree with your observations. That's identical to mine. And and the thing, because I was working with temperature, I noticed also that so they're fine for 5 years and their temperature's fine. They might be taking their temperature. And then when they go through that stress and their temperature drops, their symptoms come back. And so you have like a tangible thing, like, okay, like, why don't you take your temperatures and, oh, it sounds like your temperatures have dropped. It sounds like your metabolic rate is, let's check your metabolic rate. Not let's check your thyroid.
Mhm.
Let's check your metabolic rate.
Mhm.
Let's check your temperatures and
Mhm.
see what they're running. Oh, they're running a degree lower than they were 2 months ago when you were feeling well, or
Mhm.
less than they were like a year ago.
Mhm.
And so anyway, that's a tangible thing. Then it's not like so much woo-woo just in your head, broken record kind of thing. It's just like that's a tangible, they call body temperature a vital sign, a
Mhm.
vital sign, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your respiratory rate, and your temperature. It's
Mhm.
it's quote unquote a vital sign in medicine. And there's a reason for that because it's like crucial. It's your metabolic rate. I mean, everything depends on your metabolic rate.
Mhm.
And so that's something we should always check in my mind. I mean, it's so telling. It's like, what's your pulse rate? Oh, it's 150. What's your
If it
blood pressure?
stops, you should be concerned.
Right. What's your blood pressure? Oh, it's 180 over 120. It's like that's significant. What's your body temperature? It's a degree and a half below normal. Okay. You know. So
Yeah.
anyway, so there's that. And then but in this book, we don't probably have time to go into to explain it all, but this book is called The Power of Faster Size.
Mhm.
And I have a there's a section in there that describes two different survival mechanisms. There's two ways a body. This is just a paradigm. This is an idea I have, but I think it's a good one. I think it's accurate. But it's like I conceive in my mind there's storage mode and forage mode.
Mm.
Like there's two strategies. Like if you get into a difficult situation, one strategy is for you to go into storage mode, for your metabolism to slow down, for you to burn less calories and things like that. And that works great if um, that strategy makes sense for some people in some situations. The other approach is forage mode. In other words, if you want a coconut, you're going to have to climb the tree to get the coconut.
Mhm.
If you want a squirrel, you're going to have to chase the squirrel down. If you want some vegetables, you're going to have to farm. And so that's if you want to get something to eat, you're going to have to go find something to eat. And so that's called foraging mode. And so that there's a certain amount of activity that goes into foraging, and there's a certain activity that goes into storage. And so what happens is this slow metabolism thing, I call it storage mode. And sometimes people they have a hard time. It's a balance. They have a hard time getting out of that. But the
Mhm.
way to get out of that is to shift, to start sending your body signals that shift them into forage mode. It's like telling your body, no, no, we're not going to sit here doing nothing, collecting and saving as many calories as we can. We're going to start burning calories because there's plenty of food in there. It's not a famine. There's plenty of food out there. I'm going to go get some coconuts. I'm going to do some hunting and farming, and so you start doing physical activity that sends your body into the notion that, hey, it's not a crisis where there's no food. It's time to get strong and be able to outrun the tigers and stuff like that.
Hmm. One of my previous guests had kind of alluded to the same theory we were discussing winter. I'm up in Canada now, you're in Florida. I'm not jealous. But um, he was talking about human hibernation. And this a theory he's putting forward himself that when um, the winter comes, the colder, darker months, for a lot of people, metabolism slows down and aches and pains from autoimmune issues can increase and all this malaise, seasonal affective disorder. And his proposition is that this is an evolutionary design that puts us into storage or survival mode to keep us keep us in the house in the winter. We're too sore to go out. We're too depressed. We've no energy to keep us alive. As much as many of us are like, okay, I don't want that, you can keep it. Maybe it is an evolutionary protective mechanism. And it really does make you think, as much as cruel as it could be that the body might give you a rheumatoid arthritis flare in the winter and you can't close your hands, maybe there's a reason for it, you know?
Yeah,
So
that is interesting.
it was really interesting. And then another, I don't know if you're aware of Carol Peterson. I know she's aware of you.
Hmm.
Um, but she had mentioned to me in one of our conversations on thyroid that in some people, especially up here in Alberta where I am, there's a lot of farmers, a lot of farmland, that in some of these women, because they're so active during the day, doing the chores, the cattle, the farm work, that the increase in metabolism almost tricks their body into thinking that everything's normal, but really there may be an underlying condition because when they do slow down, and even in the winter months, these symptoms of hypothyroid appear. So it's almost like she's saying that by exercising or moving more, you're almost masking the issues of having hypothyroid or whatever else is happening there.
Yeah, I can see that. If you did have hypothyroidism in terms of low thyroid hormone production due to a thyroid gland inadequacy, then you would tend to have a lower temperature. But if you did that physical activity that helped bolster your temperature, then that could mask the symptoms of having an underlying problem. Um, yeah, the the interesting thing though is we talked earlier about irreversible versus reversible.
Mhm.
You know, er, um, you know, it's intriguing to think how many of these people is their problem reversible?
Mhm.
Can they get their temperature up to normal? Can they hold it to normal? Can they hold it to normal without medicine and recover and
Mhm.
and stay recovered? And so that's an intriguing prospect to
But if
see.
someone has genuine hypothyroid, they're going to have the low temperature, but the TSH will be out of range. And what you mentioned earlier is that if they have normal TSH and low temperature, that's potentially what we're saying a conversion issue. And then what about if they have low TSH, like under one, and low temperature and the symptoms as well? Where does that put those people?
Well, that's a really good question, and that's very rare, but it does happen. It does happen. Some
Mhm.
people, so you'd have a low TSH, and then you'd go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, "Oh, you have hyperthyroidism. You might have Graves' disease. You have hyperthyroidism." And yet you have symptoms of hypothyroidism. You have symptoms of low thyroid function and your body temperature is low. So yeah, it's completely possible to have excess thyroid hormone production from the thyroid gland and still have inadequate whatever, like you say, maybe conversion, maybe reverse T3 blockage, maybe something. But for some reason, you have all this thyroid hormone, but you still aren't getting enough of that T3 to the nucleus or to the mitochondria, and you still have a low body temperature that can be treated with T3.
Mhm.
That's a shocker. So there was this Dr. Wilson in Washington State, and she had a patient with Graves' disease. This is extremely rare, and nobody would even dream of doing this. It's so counterintuitive to what most people think. So this patient had Graves' disease, hyperthyroidism,
Mhm.
and the problem with hyperthyroidism is that it generates too much T3 among and T4. But in this case, the patient still had low temperature and still had hypothyroid symptoms. So she had the idea that I'm going to treat this patient with T3. She
Mm,
treated she treated Graves' disease with T3. The patient's temperature went to normal, the symptoms went away, and the Graves' disease went away.
mm,
So it's as if the thyroid gland was trying to make T3, trying to solve the problem, couldn't solve the problem. But when she solved the problem, when she got the temperature to normal, the person's hyperthyroidism went away.
hmm.
That's shocking. I mean, imagine, I mean, anyway, if anybody did a study on that, like we need studies on like that. Like if that would change, that would put the whole thyroid world on its
It would
head
flip it, yeah.
to do a thyroid study like that.
So
To treat Graves.
the thyroid was trying and trying and trying its best, and the T3 that was getting pumped out was being blocked somewhere. It wasn't
Yeah,
bioavailable.
apparently. Apparently, yes, somehow. Because, well, again, the only thing we can say is the T3 resolved it. Somehow circumvented it, somehow, it's hard to say exactly what happened. Of course, there's more research needed, but that one case, like I said, that, if you could replicate that in a study, that would completely throw the whole thyroid theories on, like flip the script, throw it on its head completely.
Presumably, this other Dr. Wilson was looking at a blood panel and seeing the numbers were high. So, oh no, everything should be fine theoretically, but it's not. So then, where does that bring us, the general population, in testing thyroid? And your T4 and T3 are fine, but temperature's low and you still have all the symptoms because a lot of people, as I'm sure you know, believe that if a blood panel says it, that's definitive. That this is law and there's no arguing. The doctor says I'm fine, so I must be fine, even though my leg is falling off, my hair is falling out. Like,
Exactly. You know, it's kind of confusing because like the thyroid blood tests, I believe, are a pretty good indicator of thyroid gland function. Like they tell you how well the thyroid gland is working, but we tend to forget in our current paradigm is that the purpose of the thyroid gland is to help support the metabolism. That's one of the most important, if not the most important thing. It's the most crucial um, factor in maintaining a normal temperature, a normal vital sign, a normal metabolic rate. It's crucial for that in that respect. And so, um, if you still, if you don't have if you don't have that normal temperature, I've kind of forgot where I was headed with that. I guess I was just headed to the fact that, they're looking, oh, this is it. They're acting like, oh, we're going to measure don't forget that the point of the thyroid is the metabolic rate. So they're like, we're going to use they start getting it into their head that the thyroid test measures metabolic rate, which it doesn't.
mm,
It doesn't. Like the thyroid test doesn't measure metabolic rate. It measures thyroid hormone production.
mm.
It doesn't measure metabolic rate. So that's the sad disconnect that we have going on. It's
Could
like
we
you could
argue then, I'm sorry to interrupt, could we argue then that also a thyroid blood panel is not also measuring peripheral thyroid function and the activity of the thyroid once it attaches to the cell? Because it's only
you're
looking at the blood, it's not looking at cellular activity.
exactly right. And my you're right. I mean, it would be impressive and difficult and challenging to go into a mitochondria or go into the nuclear membrane and to see the effects the T3 is having on the thyroid hormone receptors and how well that's, you know, causing a cascade. I mean, the body is incredibly complicated, but in the end, what we're really interested in is what changes symptoms and what changes health, and that's metabolic rate and that's body temperature, and
Mm,
and the body temperature. is going to be a great reflection of that. But yeah, that's what you're hitting on is exactly the emphasis I've tried to make this whole time because it's like it really like if you're considering the symptoms, see like people say, "Oh, well, what's your symptoms?" And they're like, "Oh, there's thyroid symptoms." Okay, let's measure the thyroid test.
Mm,
And you could look at those same symptoms and you say, "What are your symptoms?" "Oh, those are low temperature symptoms. Let's measure your temperature." You know,
mm.
and that's the difference. It's just like, oh, let's measure your thyroid test versus let's measure your temperature. Somehow we got on the track of measuring thyroid tests. Why? Like if we had stumbled onto measuring temperatures, like it's totally normal. I mean, it makes total sense. You have low temperature symptoms. Let's measure your temperature, see what's wrong with your temperature. Oh, your temperature's low. Oh, let's fix that.
Mhm.
If we had taken that path, that millions of people would not be in the position that they are now.
Well,
But
if they made Dr. Broda Barnes' book mandatory, it would save a lot of trouble for a lot of people.
exactly,
Even
exactly right.
one thing that I look at a lot of blood panels, and before I even consider like looking at the thyroid part of it, I always look at cholesterol and ferritin first. And immediately, if cholesterol's high, I know the thyroid's not functioning optimally, regardless of what the thyroid number says. I don't care because your thyroid tells your cholesterol what to do. And then if the cholesterol is high or low, now I know you have a problem with your sex hormones because you need cholesterol to make your sex hormones. But that's not in the range. That way of thinking is not in the range for most doctors. Definitely not trying to be negative against all doctors. There's some amazing doctors out there. But before I even look at thyroid, I'm looking at the cholesterol and the ferritin. But I
Let me
read
just
Dr.
let me
Yeah.
just say that's amazing that you're aware of that connection and that's how they used to measure thyroid function before they had thyroid blood tests. They would check the cholesterol and they would look at the cholesterol and they say, "Oh, you have high cholesterol. You must have a thyroid problem." That's what they used to do like 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
It
But
was
that's changed.
1930s, I think. Like it was like almost 100 years ago,
Yeah,
a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. Like that's probably more accurate.
So
Yeah,
it was actually this book, Dr. Broda Barnes' book,
that's the book I'm talking about.
that taught me this years ago. I
Yeah,
read this.
I was just gonna say, that's what Dr. Barnes said. That's what he would teach.
But also, my mentor is Dr. Michael Platt. You may have heard of him. So he trained me in like hormones, and he always emphasized on how over the years the cholesterol ranges have changed so much, and
Hmm.
it's enabled prescriptions for statins to kind of go off the chart and blah blah blah, all of that. So he would talk a lot about cholesterol too. And then when I read that book, I was like, well, if cholesterol was the first, like, original test for testing thyroid before we had any of the other tests, why are we not doing that now? So
Right.
that's when I got into getting my clients to start taking their temperature every single morning and then sometimes after breakfast or sometimes in the after. It depends, people are busy, but at the very least in the morning. And one thing that stood out to me was if someone has a terrible night's sleep, the temperature will go through the floor. Why is that? Because when you have a crappy sleep, that's a big stressor on your body. And if they have a
Hmm.
golden sleep, temperature's great. So, and it's like you said, like this is tangible data, and you can't contradict me because it's in your hand. It's black and white. You can see the number yourself. So I'm not necessarily crazy. It's something this simple. You can get a thermometer for like $10 is going to give you more of an idea of what's happening with your body than a lot of other stuff would.
Exactly. And you would be you'd be tickled to hear this. Patients would come in, their cholesterol's like 400, and it's just like the cholesterol's super high. Put them on T3, like get their temperatures up sometimes within a week, their cholesterols would be back down to normal. Boom, just like that. So, like they don't need all these, statins and stuff. I mean, it's so easy to bring somebody's cholesterol down. You can bring their cholesterol down in 5 minutes if you get their temperature to normal. I mean, it's crazy how responsive that is
But
to temperature.
I'll be bold and say that there's no money if we give everyone T3 and we're not prescribing statins. A client actually had a blood panel done last week and showed me the bloods yesterday, and the cholesterol was high. And the doctor told her, well, you need more healthy fats. And then I roll my eyes and I'm like, oh, give me strength. I'm like, it is being confirmed. We know that dietary cholesterol does not influence cholesterol on a blood panel. This is your thyroid. She already has metabolic syndrome. I'm like, this is your thyroid. We need to do more work on your thyroid. But the fact that the doctor said that, I'm like, how would you like it's been public for what it was announced 2000, 2002. Dietary cholesterol does not make a like almost 15 years, yet you're still
Mhm.
repeating the same rubbish.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, I wouldn't have a job if they were doing it right. So let's just put it like that. So
Yeah.
just we're coming up on time. Just wanted to hear when you were practicing. As I mentioned, at the very least, as much as possible, I'll get people to take their temperature first thing in the morning. How were you doing it when you were working with patients?
I would recommend that they up on my website there's a little thing that explains how to check your temperature. And but anyway, I would have them take it every 3 hours, 3 times a day, starting 3 hours after they woke up. So I'm not interested just in their waking temperature because I want to know what their temperatures are specifically when they're having their symptoms. So if
Mm,
they're having their symptoms during the day, I want to know what their temperatures during the day. So like if they woke up at 7, we would take it at 10, 1, and 4. And we'd take those average temperatures to try to get a temperature, an average of their temperatures. One time, it's fascinating stuff. They actually make a capsule now that you can swallow that sends the data to a data reader.
mm,
And I've measured my own temperature like that for days, and it's incredible what you can see from doing that. And one thing I want to throw out there real quick is just this simple concept, but there's sometimes when you're in Calgary or Alberta
mhm,
but anyway, so you're up in the snow country, and if you go outside for too long without the clothes that you need, you're just going to start to get cold. You could die from that. It's hypothermic, stuff. And so what's interesting is that when it gets to be a real emergency, like your temperature is like dangerously low,
mm,
you'll start to shiver. You won't run in place, you won't do push-ups, you won't do sit-ups. You'll shiver like that.
mm,
And the reason why is because that shivering is the fastest way your body has of generating heat. A shivering muscle generates 2 to 3 times more heat than a statically contracted muscle. Like a muscle that's just firm in one spot,
mm,
it uses 2 to 3 times more calories when it's moving like that. And so anyway, my point is people can use like I had that swallowed thing I was telling you about, and I uh, I shivered like this intentionally. You don't have to be cold to shiver, but if you have a low temperature and
mm,
you shiver like that as fast as you can for a minute, you can raise your body temperature 1 degree
mm.
Fahrenheit. 1 degree Fahrenheit.
Which is law, yeah.
It is enough to boil 3 cups of water. That's enough heat. That's enough calories to boil 3 cups of water,
Mm,
and you release that in 1 minute. And so, and that temperature change will last for a couple of hours. So it's an easy way for these people. So if you have people with these low temperature symptoms, it's an easy thing for them to do. Shiver as fast as you can until you get out of breath and you can't do it anymore. Sometimes people can only shiver like that for 30 seconds. sometimes only 40 seconds. But if they shiver like that and they notice that their symptoms improve, they can use that shivering to treat their symptoms. They can modulate their temperature with that shivering exercise.
Well,
So
we've got an
that,
easy solution here because yesterday was minus 20 Celsius here, so we could just go stand outside. You don't need to
yeah,
fake shiver. So
yeah, yeah,
basically, if you stand outside for a few days shivering, you'll be pretty close to your goal weight in no time.
yeah, yeah. I could picture that.
Or
I could
every
picture
time you
that.
have like Christmas treats, stand outside for an hour after and you'll break even.
That's right. That's right.
So one
It's
thing I did want to ask you about is just because we didn't touch on it, and people do ask me, I think people are becoming more aware of everything now. Podcasts are obviously making a big difference there. Is Do you know what part the deiodinase enzyme would play in this kind of, shall we say, the conversion, low temperature, peripheral thyroid function, whatever we want to call it? Where would that, because a lot of the times I've had people come to me and say, oh, this metabolic practitioner or so and so tested and my deiodinase enzyme is low. And I'm immediately thinking, well, there's going to be some liver issues and some inflammation there for sure. But what do you think about that?
well, the deiodinase enzyme, of course, is critical with changing, converting T4 to T3. There's one deiodinase that grabs one iodine molecule and turns T4 into T3, and there's a different deiodinase that takes off a different iodine molecule and atom, I should say, and that turns it into reverse T3. So, of course, that's crucial. As far as how to what's impairing that. I mean, we know that um, my memory is my belief, and you can search this, but if I'm not mistaken, the T4, I mean, reverse T3 impairs the deiodinase that converts T4 to T3. And I think that's vice versa. The T3 impairs or inhibits, I should say, the iodinase that converts T4 to reverse T3. So it's kind of like a counterbalancing thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as having so these molecules they're under these deiodinases they're under regulation. They're up regulation, down regulation. There's some things that increase their production. There's some things that decrease their production. To say that I, I think it's a my first reaction is like if you told me I did a blood test. The guy did a blood test and it said that the deiodinase was low.
Mm-hmm.
That that seems kind of hard for me to grasp for one thing because the deiodinase doesn't have its activity so much. I mean, it's not entirely in the bloodstream. It has it inside the cell. Inside the cell is where this T4 to T3 conversion happens. And how can you measure that? I don't think you can. And the fact that it's modulated. Your reverse T3 can go up in, like if someone came up behind you, like did a YouTube prank video on you or something and scared you with a mask and it just scared you witless, your reverse T3 levels would go up. And can they go up in a minute? Probably. Could they go up in an hour? Definitely. Like within an hour, your reverse T3 levels can be substantially different. So can that happen with a deiodinase? I'm sure it can. Like if you they fluctuate, they're under regulation, but you're right. Like how anybody would determine that, oh, this person has a deficiency. I mean, if you have a deficiency, a real deficiency in producing deiodinase, that's that's rough because that's almost incompatible with life. Like you have to be able to deiodinate. If you can't deiodinate, then you're not going to make it.
Well,
So
that's
anyway,
it, and there's no direct test for it either. It's more so a calculation.
yeah, 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 exactly. So it would be put it this way, I would put a lot more stock. I would have a lot more faith in the temperature because it's a lot. I mean, you know. that's an end result that is significant. It's an end result that is significant, and it's also a result that can be changed. It's a result that can be titrated. You can adjust lifestyle to change your temperature. You can adjust medication to change your temperature. And if you change your temperature, you're going to change your symptoms. And so that's what I would focus on. I think that would bear more fruit than a lot of other things that might be less direct.
And it's like, come on, people. It's easy. It takes a few seconds. It's non-invasive. Like, why wouldn't you do it? If that was my tip for 26 is if there's one thing you need to do in 2026, it's start taking your temperature so you can start understanding your body. Okay, I would be remiss to let you go, Dr. Wilson. I know people are screaming at the screen when they listen to this because this is not live. Are there any nutrients, herbs, supplements, foods? You mentioned the shivering. Maybe we'll arrange another talk on the faster side sometime. But is there, people are like, well, what can I take? What can I do? And apart from hire me, and read your book, what could we do?
Um, we did mention the shivering. I'm gonna mention that that's described in here. But to me, that's something that's super accessible to most. I mean, that's very accessible and something
Mhm.
I think most people would respond to. But there are herbal approaches, there are nutrient approaches, like iodine can be super helpful. There's all kinds of controversy about how much to take, like 12.5 milligrams, 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams,
Mhm.
whether you're pregnant, whether you're not pregnant. So that's a long discussion. But there are herbs like blue flag iris is something that can, like I told you about titrating the dose of the T3 to normalize the temperature. We've done that with herbs as well.
Mhm.
There's Restorative Formulations is a company I used to be a co-founder in. I'm not involved in it anymore. I sold my interest to my business partner, but he still operates it.
Mhm.
And there's a product there called Thyroid PX. And Thyroid PX is we would ty it's restorative formulations, and they sell this product called Thyroid PX. And we would titrate the dose. We would teach doctors to titrate the dose according to temperature. So it's one capsule twice a day for a week. And if your temperature stays low, it's two capsules twice a day for a week. And if it stays low, three capsules twice a day for a week,
Mhm.
and maybe even four capsules twice a day for a week. But a lot of people are able to get their temperatures up just with herbal and nutrient. It has zinc, it has selenium, it has blue flag. I believe it has ashwagandha in it as
So
well.
if they hit four capsules, unlike the T3, do you leave them at four capsules or will you eventually bring them back down?
Um, it's something that they could stay on, but lots of times they don't need to stay on it.
Okay.
So again, you do this to support their temperature and hopefully get their lifestyle in order, get them out from under the rock of being feeling overwhelmed. And so you could you know, basically help them get back on their feet again. And then once they're on their feet again and feeling better, you could try to start gradually weaning them off that. And a lot of times they are able to wean off that. So
And I think
it's
because the season that's in it, I'm going to mention this. I think you'd mentioned one of the holy herbs as well. Myrrh can be helpful.
yeah. I don't recall that. I mean, there's holy basil, and but not so much myrrh. Like I can bring up the thyroid PX. See, there's another one that goes really well with thyroid PX. It's like two volleyball players on the same team, like a two man. But anyway, thyroid and adrenal work
Yeah.
really well together, and so there's adrenal PX balance and thyroid PX balance, and those work together really well to help normalize temperature. Um, so anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say. Well, this has been fascinating. And one last thing I wanted to say, which I did hear in one of your like older podcast conversations, that you had mentioned that you thought what you were doing with patients and clients at the time was really fun. You were really enjoying it, helping people and seeing their results. And now that you're retired, I was wondering, do you miss that aspect of it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like I use the term reincarnated. There's nothing like helping someone become reincarnated, and I really did enjoy doing that personally,
Mm,
and having my own patients and helping people. I mean, I've had patients come up to me in medical conferences, and they say, Dr. Wilson, I just wanted to let you know that I wanted to introduce you to my daughter who was conceived by virtue of T3 therapy.
mm,
The wife couldn't have a baby because her temperature was too low.
mhm.
Got her temperature up, she was conceived. She couldn't have a baby. I've met so many T3 babies, and they're like in college and medical school and stuff. And they were so anyway, yeah, it's hugely gratifying. But one thing that occurred to me very early on is that, for every T3 baby that I meet, that I helped, there's so many out there that I can't treat them all. The best thing I could do is help other doctors treat these patients. And so
Mm,
that's why if you go to the website, I put everything about this on our website. There's a free book and there's a free doctor's manual. This has the T3 protocol that doctors can use to do the T3. But there's also like the herbs, and there's people can learn how to use that. And then there's also the exercise and fitness aspect of it. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, it's got to be more than just me. It's got to be a lot. I mean, we have to educate. We have to, educate, change the paradigm and educate as many doctors as possible and practitioners so that they recognize that in 2026, we're going to check the temperatures
mhm.
and we're going to help people normalize their temperature and feel better. So yeah, like that's what I would love to see us. That's what we need to do.
Okay, everyone, you heard him. This year, you're asking Santa for a thermometer.
Exactly.
Dr. Wilson, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time today. And I'll put links, your books, everything down below in the description. Hopefully, I can bug you enough in the future to do a conversation around the faster size, because then I'm
Yeah.
going to give you a little bit more about my story, that I
Excellent.
think will be interesting for you. But thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I've really enjoyed it. So thanks very much.
Brilliant.
Thanks for
Thank
having me.
you. Have a good day.
Okay, bye. You too.